Our guest in the studio joins us. Well, it's been a while because he got tied up, and this happens in his business. Exhibits change, and there are a lot of meetings, and there's a lot of planning, and so we haven't seen Chris Anderson in a couple of months, but he has an opportunity to join us back in studio today. Welcome.
Well, so I'm both late and early. I'm late for my September appearance, or my even my October appearance, but I'm early for my November appearance.
This is
So,
good because you know what's going to happen here in the next couple of weeks. It's all going to be candidates and
oh yeah. Well, not only that, but we've got some really cool stuff coming up at the Herod Center right here at the end of the month. So
Halloween.
yeah, well, in honor of Halloween, we're having a monster day on Saturday, and I mean that both figuratively and literally. We've got two things going on. On Saturday, we've got the Creepy Crawly Day, which is something we do every year. And we thought, hey, let's put it near Halloween because what's more Halloween than creepy crawlies, right? So pretty much anything that isn't a bird, fish, or mammal is fair game. If it's got lots of legs, or if it slithers, or if it's a reptile, those are all fair things. And that means you can come and see these things up close. Some of them you're actually allowed to touch if you want. That'll go from 1 to 5. So hey, what better time of year to maybe overcome those phobias and confront them head on, or if not, just stand at the back and appreciate the animals from a distance. So
Halloween. I once went to a Star Trek themed Halloween party.
yeah.
I was a young guy, and I got invited. My date ended up, and women will do this. They make their own costumes. You remember the episode where they had the planet where they were like Greek gods,
Oh
and
sure.
the woman had like the Golda May dress.
Oh yes,
So my
yes.
date, she got the Golda May dress. She made it for herself. She looked great. I just put on a black double-breasted suit, and I walked in the door, and the guy hosting the party says, "You're supposed to be a costume." And I said, "Kirk, where are those heaters?" Which is Dick Tayback's character,
That was right. That was from the gangster episode. Yep.
and so they said,
Piece
"Oh,
of the
okay, you
action.
can come in." And
Yeah, just to prove my nerd cred, that was a piece of the action, and the Greek gods episode was Who Mourns for Adonis. So
yes.
we did not stage this off air, folks. I promise you, this is a
And
spontaneous
then,
knowledge
then
of my
when he was
part.
asking Captain Kirk a question on Saturday Night Live, Kirk said, "Get a life." Yes.
Exactly.
So you have a lot more though, even in this is like a 5 week tour really through the museum.
Yeah, pretty much. So we've got Creepy Crawly Day is this Saturday, but also this Saturday, as it turns out, is the end of our contract to play Sea Monsters in the planetarium. So that show that we've had for 3 years is about to expire, and we can't show it anymore after this weekend. So that means that two things: we're going to have extra showings of Sea Monsters. It's going to run 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, and 4:30, and even better, half price for those final showings. So if you haven't seen the show about the creatures that lived under the Cretaceous oceans, or if you want to come back and see it again, this will be your last opportunities this coming Saturday night or Saturday afternoon.
So
So
it's going to get a little crowded there too, though, and not just this weekend, but you have a lot going on, obviously, in the month of November, and
oh yeah,
because November Thanksgiving, I think, is the greatest of all American holidays.
absolutely, it's as
Maybe even
American as it
more so
gets.
than
Yeah.
Independence Day because it represents the family unit. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of stuff that goes on at the museum that ties into these different times of year and the seasonal changes.
You bet. And one of those things is when the daylight saving goes away, we start having our telescope Tuesdays again. And that's because now it gets dark early enough that we can do some
It's
observing on
very
a
early.
weeknight without keeping the kids up late on a school night. So our first telescope Tuesday is coming up on the 8th. And I'm trying to think. Can you think of anything else that's going on November 8th? I'm scratching
The
my head.
kids don't care
Yeah.
though.
Well, actually, you should care because what we're doing on that night, normally Telescope Tuesday is $1.50 a person, in honor of the electoral process and our duty as citizens to vote. If you show up with your I voted sticker, you get in for free that night. How about that? So go vote earlier in the day, and then you can come over anytime from 6:30 to 9. Come look through the telescope. Think about things beyond this world. Take the long view. So whoever you vote for or don't vote for, forget about that and just focus on the beauties of the
That's what
universe
the
for a little
sign
bit.
over at the Southern Baptist Church on Washington Street is telling us that,
Yeah.
no matter who wins this thing, there's somebody
Exactly.
else who's boss.
Yep. So that's our first Telescope Tuesday. Now, between now and then, I should mention also our next astronomy talk is coming up, and that'll be on Wednesday the 2nd. And this one is about one of the constellations of the sky. This one's about Capricornus. If you know your constellations, you know that's the one that's half goat, half fish.
Mhm.
Which who came up with that? That's and actually that's one of the more ancient constellations. I'll talk about the origins of it, the mythology of it, but also some of the interesting targets you can find with it, how to identify it in the sky. And then afterwards, as long as the skies are clear, we'll go up to the telescope and we'll check out some of those targets within the constellation of Capricornus. So
One old friend of mine doesn't tweet much, but I think her last tweet is from September of last year, and it's a reference to comment made by an astronaut about how when he was in space he couldn't see any constellations
Right.
because all he could see were stars, collections of stars, and you
Right.
you can't pick out constellations up there.
Yep, yep. Too many stars. I've had people have that make that same complaint from some of our dark sky star parties. They get out in the middle of City of Rocks or Craters of the Moon, and they look up and they go, "I can't pick out any constellations. There's too many stars." So yeah, maybe we'll give you some good skills for locating Capricornus, just in case you're looking for it under dark sky sometime. So
We've got a short break. You've got more coming up. We want to point out Chris Anderson is joining us from the Harrod Center. And also, if you have a question or comment for him in the next segment of the program, feel free to give us a telephone call. The telephone number, 7360300. I used to tell people to put that in speed dial, but now that we've got cell phones and no one has a landline,
that's right. You just ask Siri to dial
yes,
it.
we've got more on the way. It's 46 right now. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story. Our studio guest, Chris Anderson, he's joining us from the Harrod Center, which is at the College of Southern Idaho, and actually very visible if you're driving down. What street is that again?
North College.
North College, and it's right there because you can actually see the observatory.
Yeah, that silver dome kind of sticks out. So.
Yes, it's the only one on the street. We were mentioning you've got a lot going on. I know there's a couple of other things you wanted to review as well today.
You bet. We've got our monthly free star parties coming up on the 12th. And of course, as you've almost certainly noticed, it's getting dark a lot earlier these days as we move towards winter. But that's good news for astronomy. That means we get to start our star parties earlier. You don't have to stay up quite as late if you want to come and look through the telescope. So the star party on the 12th starts at 6:15. Now we're starting a little bit before dark because there's a few planets that you can see in twilight. You can probably notice that really bright object over there in the western sky. That's Venus, the brightest planet. And we'll get a glimpse of that just before it gets too low for the telescope at the beginning of the night. And then we've also got Saturn and Mars. Mars is not in the greatest position to view right now, but Saturn and its rings, they are always amazing to look at. So those are two of the early evening targets. If you come a little bit later, the crowds tend to thin out, the temperatures tend to drop a little bit. Of course, don't heat the dome, but you also get darker skies, and we get a lot of the deep sky targets that'll be up. So that's
Is in this time of year, because we have maybe more cloud cover now than we generally have in summer, but on a clear night in the fall or winter, do you get a better look at the sky?
Oh yeah, yeah. If there's if it's a good clear cold night, then a lot of the moisture that would be sort of dimming the stars is not up there. Colder air can't hold moisture as well as warm air does. So yeah, you definitely get some crisper views that way.
And I
So
recall we sponsored a fireworks night the night after Thanksgiving last year at the radio
mhm.
station, and it was very cold. But I can recall while I was waiting for the fireworks, looking up at that
Oh
sky,
yeah.
it was incredibly clear.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, we'll get those. You're right. We'll have more cloudy days overall, cloudy nights overall during the winter months than during the summer. But when it is clear, it can often be spectacularly so.
Anything else you have coming up in November?
Not so much in November, but I do want to let people know that the tour that we've been promising for some time now to go see the total solar eclipse next summer in August is now open for
I was going
reservations.
to ask you about that.
Yeah, in fact, we opened the reservations just a little bit less than a month ago, and we're only going to take 2 tour buses full. That's it. And once we get to that limit, we're done. We've almost filled our first tour bus already. So even with 9 months to go. So don't wait on this, folks, because once it's full, it's full. And if you haven't heard, I mean, this is a big deal. It's estimated that this will be the most watched total solar eclipse in human history up to this date. So that's one thing. And many people are going to see it as a partial eclipse because they're not going to make the effort to go beyond the line on the path of totality. I've been telling people that that's roughly the equivalent of listening to, if you stay home, it's like listening to the Super Bowl on the radio versus going and seeing it in person. It is, yes, it's the same event going on, but there's no comparison of listening to the radio versus seeing it with your own eyes. So if you want to really see this eclipse for what it really is, you got to go beyond the shadow path. Now the shadow path cuts through Idaho from Weiser to Rexburg. Up at Redfish, they've been booked up solid for over a year now. In fact, they took their first reservations for this eclipse in 2005, if you can believe that. People are coming from all over the planet, and Idaho is one of the prime locations because we have some of the highest probability of clear skies here. So that's why people are converging. And on our tour already, as I said, we've almost filled one of the tour buses. We've already got 8 people from Canada. We have 3 from California. We have 4 from Colorado. We have 2 from Texas. They're coming to Twin Falls to get on the bus, go drive up to the eclipse path where we can watch the eclipse, and then back to Twin Falls later that day. So the total package includes luxury coach transportation. We're not talking school buses here. We're talking luxury coaches. You'll get a commemorative T-shirt. You'll get a pair of Eclipse shades for safely viewing the partial phases before and after totality. You'll get a mid-morning snack since it's going to be a little bit of a long day, and water. We'll have some shade canopies set up so during the partial phases you're not going to be standing out in the hot sun in August. And then finally an après eclipse buffet lunch before we head back to town after it's all over with. So
You referencing school buses, though, there will be a lot of them on the road that day taking
there will.
students, I'm
Yep,
sure.
and that's all the more reason why you don't want to wait to the last minute. There are going to be lots of people who are just going to spontaneously say, "Oh, hey, I'm just going to go drive and get to a spot where I can watch this eclipse." If you don't have a spot already blocked out in advance, good luck finding a place. Major highways will probably be bumper to bumper on the shoulders along the eclipse path. So we already have several sites blocked out for as primary and alternate sites. So on that day, should we have to move to get away from a cloud or things like that, we have that kind of option built in. So
Many, many years ago, I rode a bicycle from Bridgeville, Delaware to Washington, and I bought myself a pair of sunglasses that they're like we used to joke that they were the old men sunglasses that they cover
sure. Yep, around
the
the sides.
sides.
Yep.
And I wore those just because there was going to be a lot of glare on the roads I was
Hmm.
pedaling, and Route 50 is a very nasty road anyway, and I wanted to make sure I could see everything without a lot of sun. But those will not be. I mean, you need something better than even those,
Absolutely
right, to
right.
look at
Yeah,
this.
no, the eclipse shades we're talking about here are actually as dark as welder's glass number 14, which is darker than almost any welder uses. And that is what's needed to block out really the dangerous invisible rays. You look at the sun and your natural reaction is to look away because of how bright it is. But what you don't realize is it's not the light that's doing the damage. It's the infrared and it's the ultraviolet. And that's really what causes damage to your eyes. Well, if you're using an inadequate filter, if you're using like a welder's glass that's less than number 14, most electronic glasses or welders helmets don't go that dark. The problem is that it cuts the glare down enough that now you can stare for a long time while all that damage is still being done. So yeah, you don't want to go. And really, even if you don't go with us on the tour, the Eclipse shades over at the Harrod Center, they cost $2. Why would you risk your eyesight over $2? So, so if you are going to see the eclipse, whether you stay here in Twin or whether you go to the eclipse path, you definitely want to have a pair of these eclipse shades to protect your eyes for the partial
I've
phases. So,
shared this story before when I was a kid, and this was late 60s or maybe 1970. There was a major eclipse, and my dad brought home a welding mask,
hmm
and he had us look out one of the windows in the house through the welding mask at
yep.
it. And then when I worked for David Schumacher for a number of years, he had been with CBS News, and he went to Mexico to actually cover it, and told me the story about the birds and the cattle falling asleep in the
Oh
middle of the
yeah.
day,
Yep.
which there may be a lot of that going on this time around too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When it starts getting and you might even get a little bit of that here in Twin as it gets dark enough. Birds are going to start seeking their nighttime roosting trees. The cows are going to start walking back toward the barn like it's the end of the day, even though it'll be happening, middle of the day, 11:30 in the morning. So,
So it triggers something in these animals.
oh yeah, they're sensitive to. Oh, it's getting dark. It must be the end of the day. So, and really, what you will experience is very much like deep twilight, but it's going to look very different because when it's twilight, think about it. The sun is on one side of the sky, and there's a whole gradation of different colors and shades across this from one horizon to the other. Well, in this case, the sun's going to be high overhead. So you're not going to have the same sort of appearance of twilights with the sun way up in the sky, mostly dimmed out, as you would if it were below the horizon with these different. So it's a very different kind of twilight. But if you're actually in the shadow path where the sun will be completely blocked out, even a few bright stars and planets will become visible during totality. So,
I didn't know if you had anything else, but if you don't, I sent you a link earlier this morning that you may have seen or may not have seen, but it's about how we could send life to other planets. However, it would not be human. Well, it would be a dead human.
I heard about this story. Actually, I saw the headline, but I didn't get a chance to read the whole story. So, yeah, a little creepy. But yeah, I'll have to read the story because, like I said, I just saw the headline, but I didn't get a chance to delve into it.
The discussion in the story this morning was the writer was explaining that you may not go too far because radiation would obviously degrade everything at
Hmm.
some point, and if you're trying to get to the next galaxy, you're likely not going to make it. However, they said if you couldn't send someone just in a suit because they would burn up on re-entry going to a planet. But the
Right.
idea is there would be microbes still in the corpse.
Sure.
So if you could have a capsule that would stand up to the heat of re-entry or entry in this case, and then when the capsule actually breaks to the ground, it would split open on its own. It'd be designed to split open and then therefore release your corpse, but all of the microbes, the
Wow.
living microbes. And I posted something about that, and then Brad responded with an email, which was the Mr. Spock's coffin, of course.
Oh yeah, sure. The Genesis planet.
So, uh, but at first I read that and I thought it seems macabre, but the idea is this is how you would transfer. And the theory is that may well be how a lot of life ended up here in the first place. It just came with
Yeah,
debris and the like.
so-called panspermia. Yeah, with the idea that a rock knocked off another planet by an impact might be carrying microbes, which would then be transmitted to that planet. And of course, back in the 80s, there was this 90s actually, there was this rock that was found in Antarctica that they thought they saw signs of microfossils in it that could have been from Martian life. Now, it's still controversial whether those actually were of biological origin as opposed to just some sort of chemical or geological process. But it's possible. It's not completely out of the question that a living thing could be transmitted from one planet to another by that kind of mechanism. I'll also mention, by the way, Bill, that not a lot of people are aware of this, but since we are coming up on Halloween, it's good to mention that various parts of dead human bodies have flown on board the shuttle. So back during the shuttle era, they had both a human skull and a human torso with flesh that flew on board, obviously both in containers. But these were designed with they had sensors inside of them to try to measure how penetrating radiation in space would be to get into a human skull and to get into a human torso. And so that both of those things actually flew more than once on board the shuttle. So they didn't really widely publicize it because they knew that wasn't exactly the greatest PR. But hey, it's to me it's science. It's part of how we learn what the space environment is like and how we can survive it for the long term as humans. So
With people trying to book a ride all the time, you have to be a cadaver to get one.
there you go.
We got a couple of minutes to go on one last thing. I was reading because I had an issue at home. I was coming home and I would have a drawer in the kitchen that was open, and I thought, I'm not sure my cat's strong enough to pull that drawer open. He might be, but this has happened to be 3 or 4 times in the last week. And then somebody commented, has there been a lot of earthquake activity in Idaho recently? Well, there's always earthquake activity, but we actually have had a number of tremors that have happened in southern, especially eastern Idaho, just in the last few weeks. But there's no real pattern of anything here, is there?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I've been in Idaho for 20 years, and I think in that time there's only been 2 earthquakes that I can think of that were strong enough that we should have been able to feel them. And unfortunately, one of them I was driving at the time, and the other one I was sleeping at the time, so I didn't get to feel either one of these very minor temblors. But yeah, they can happen here. But as natural disaster proof states go, Idaho's pretty darn good. I think that's one of the reasons why Idaho is often ranked highly as a desirable place to live. Because you think about it, we can't get hurricanes, we can't get you know the strongest tornado ever recorded in Idaho was an F1, which is basically it's a strong wind by if you've ever lived in Tornado Alley.
Right, right.
And earthquakes, yes, but they tend to be quite rare. Of course, a lot of people are aware of the Bora quake that happened back in the 80s and actually did caused 2 deaths when a brick wall fell over on a couple little girls on their way to school. But yeah, for the most part, you'd be hard pressed to find a place that's less prone to natural disasters than Idaho within the United States. So,
And yet, when I went to visit Craters at the Moon for the very first time, and I was under the assumption that these lava flows were very old,
mhm.
but geologically they're very recent.
No, 2,000 years ago. That's a week ago Tuesday in geology. But the good news is that they're also the least dangerous type of eruption. It's this sort of gentle flows like you have in Hawaii. I mean, Hawaii, you can go and see active volcanoes in almost perfect safety because it's just this runny lava that just kind of flows gently out of the ground. It doesn't come out explosively like the ones in the Cascades do, like Rainier and those kind of volcanoes. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to have a volcano in your backyard, the one you want is the type we have out at Craters of the Moon. And you talk to most of the rangers out there, and they'll say, "Oh gosh, it would be amazing if we could get these eruptions started again. Our tourism would go way up, and they'd all love to see it." So
Yeah, in fact, I found they're very friendly. The park service people there
oh
too.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I had the same experience when I first came out here. In fact, I had never seen the black birds with the yellow wings, and so I was driving up there and I'd seen them, and I first thing I pulled in and asked the rangers, I said, "So can you tell me what's this bird I've been seeing on the way up here? That's this black bird with yellow wings." They said it's a yellow-winged blackbird. It's like, I guess I could have guessed that.
I happened to, I was shooting a video I was over at Grand Teton National Park a few weeks ago, and I had seen a moose the day before. He was
Hmm.
blocking traffic, so I mean, I could see him close up.
Yeah.
But I went to this pond they have. It's a big pond. I mean, it's almost as big as a lake, I guess. And it was a moose habitat feeding area, or where they come to drink. And I didn't see any moose that day, but while I was there, there was a crow making a lot of noise, and I was able to pan him across the sky as he was cawing, and
Nice.
uh, and and for a change kept the video camera steady as well.
Nice.
And that's the thing I love about the Northwest is that you could live 160 years and you'll never see all of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been in Idaho for 20, and I've still got lots of Idaho I want to see yet. So
Want to thank you for coming by.
thank you.
We'll talk to you again probably sometime in November.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely, because we've got our Christmas shows coming up right after Thanksgiving. So
Super. Want to thank Chris Anderson for coming by today. And of course, God willing, if the creek don't rise, I'll be able to come back and do this all over again between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. News from Fox is straight ahead at 10 o'clock.